Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Many of us are familiar with Deco Foil, and this of course is the foil that you can use to create really fun foiled effects. Many people use this Deco Foil with a laminating machine, but to be honest with you, I really didn't want to invest with another gadget. I just don't have the room in my studio, and additionally, the effect that I like with the Deco Foil is more of a grunge background, not necessarily a complete foiled background. Now, Deco Foil does have an adhesive pen, and I thought that might actually work for the techniques that I like to use with the Deco Foil. Like I said, I like to create more of a grunge background, and I didn't necessarily want it to have complete backgrounds. So I went ahead and plunged into the purchase of this Deco Foil pen, and I just brought it out to try it out and see what I could do with it. So I just turned on the camera to just play a little bit, just to see what kind of techniques I can get. Now, the thing about the Deco Foil is it's more like a pen. Like I said, it's a controlled glue stick. And you can easily write words. You can outline items. There's a lot of things that you can do with this pen. But I wanted to do more of a random sampling on my background. So I just kind of took my Deco Foil adhesive pen and I started moving it around, just kind of splotching it. I took my paintbrush at one point and I started just kind of moving the ink. Or I should say the glue, because that's really what it is. It's adhesive. Now, when you use this adhesive pen, you want to make sure that it is somewhat dry before you add your foil. And what they recommend is about 30 seconds to a minute. So you're going to want to go ahead and just freehand or stencil your adhesive pen, moving the pen slowly. Let the adhesive dry just a bit, like I said, for about 30 seconds to a minute. And then you can go ahead and add your foil. So with any new product, of course, I just like to play a little bit just to see what I can do. So I added some of the adhesive on the background just to create some grunge. And then I also took the adhesive pen and wrote out some words. It did work pretty well. I would say probably if you are going to write out the words, you want to make sure that you have a nice crisp piece of foil. And perhaps you can also run it through your Big Shot. I know that it is recommended if you want to get a nice adhesive, but I was just using my finger, and then I was also using the back of a paintbrush just to move some of my product. But probably if you want a nice crisp adhesive image, you're going to want to have something really flat and strong to put it through. So I believe that if you put it through your Big Shot plates and run it through your Big Shot, you probably would get a really good adhesive stick. Now, like I said, you can also outline some of your images. And so I took my adhesive pen and I just outlined this flower. And as you can see, that did work pretty well. It really gives a nice outline to my flowers, and it makes those flowers really pop. So after I got a good feel for the adhesive pen, I decided to go ahead and create a card. Now, the card that I'm going to be creating today is in celebration of the Spring Fling event going on over at STAMPlorations. And the stamp set that I am using today is from their line. And the set is called Framed Dogwood. These are really pretty florals, and I went ahead and I decided to use this along with the technique using the adhesive deco pen and the deco foil that I just shared with you. So to start out, I just brought out my MISTI and I am stamping my image using Memento black ink because I did want to do some Copic coloring. And my idea was to go ahead and cut out this little framed image. But when I was playing with it earlier, I found that the image was just a little bit too small for the die cut that I wanted to use. So I went ahead and I framed it with some of my washi tape. Now, this is a really good technique if you have an image that you want to cut out, but you don't want to have any white edges around. Just take some of your washi tape and frame your image, and then use that washi tape to fill in the edges of your die cut. And then after I ran it through my Big Shot, you can see it really looks like it was part of the image. It's just a little way to frame an image that's just a little bit smaller than a die cut that you might want to be using. And then I took my clarity brushes along with the picked raspberry distress oxide, and I just added some of that pink on the background. I wanted it to be very subtle, and that's why I decided to use my clarity brush. Now, I still wanted to color in the dogwoods, but I wanted it to be somewhat light, but not as subtle as just running the brush over with my distress oxides. So in keeping with the color theme, I did just swipe my picked raspberries onto my mixed media mat, and then using my water brush, I decided to paint in my dogwood flowers. I am not big on watercoloring, and I do it very rarely. So as you can see, it's just a very simple technique to add some of that watercolor look. And as I am coloring the flowers, I am using just a cloth to kind of dab up some of the excess water as I paint my flowers. So after I was finished with the watercoloring, I decided just to give it a little bit more of an outline. So I brought out one of my markers and I decided to outline the flower. Sometimes when you use different mediums, it enables you to create somewhat of a shadow without having to have a lot of talent in coloring. So I'm just using a couple of different mediums to give it a nice, interesting look. And again, I'm just going through the outline. Now, after I had finished with my marker, I decided to come in with my Adhesive Deco Foil pen because I wanted to add some of that Deco Foil to my flower as well. And not only did I want that Deco Foil on my flower, but I also wanted to have that grunge look on my background. So I got another piece of white cardstock and I just started adding some of the adhesive glue pen to my white cardstock. And then after about a minute, I took my Deco Foil and I started adding it to my images. Now, as you remember, I just put a few speckles on this flower, so you won't see a lot of the foil, but just enough to kind of outline that flower and give it a little bit more added interest. And then with the background, I took my Deco Foil and just kind of added it randomly to create a background. I just wanted some speckles. I didn't want necessarily a pattern, so I just kind of took that adhesive, that Deco Foil and just kind of put it all over the cardstock just to create somewhat of a grunge look. So after I was happy with the background, I decided to add one more medium. So I pulled out one of the stencils, also from STAMPlorations, to add to the floral background. Okay, so the paint that I'm going to be adding to the background using my stencil is from Finnabar, and it's the Art Alchemy acrylic paint, and the color is called a metallic vintage rose. So using my paintbrush, I just dipped it right into the paint and I added it to my cardstock. Now, as you can see, I did use some of that blue painter's tape to frame off my white cardstock and to hold my paper in place, and that always works really well. Now, as you can see, I didn't use this paint sparingly. I really wanted to have a nice coat, so I added a couple of layers. And the brush that I am using is from Mod Podge. It's one of those brushes that has the flat edge, so I can really scrape the paint as I'm adding it to my layers and using it on my stencil. And it really enables me not only to add the paint, but actually move the paint as well. So that way, if I have excess paint, it will kind of brush it down. Kind of like a paint spatula. And it's a brush that I like to use with stencils to make sure that I don't get too much excess underneath my stenciled images. All right, so after I was finished with my stenciling, I decided to add just a little bit more interest. So I grabbed one of my stamps, and as you can see, I'm just holding it in my hand, and I'm just adding a little bit more interest to the background. And then when I was happy with my background, I did go ahead and cut out my cardstock using the same die set that I used for the smaller image, but this is just a bigger image, and this is I believe it's called the Crazy Stitch die, but I'll make sure that I link all the products below when I'm finished. All right, now it was time to add my smaller image to the background that we just created. And as you can see, even though I use different mediums, the cardstocks really complement each other, and the black outline that I used for the smaller piece really is a nice contrast. And to add some dimension, I did use some adhesive foam to add the smaller image to the background, and then from there it was just a matter of adding the design piece to some white cardstock. But when I looked at the white cardstock, I thought it was just a little bit too plain, so again I decided to matte that piece with some black cardstock and then put that on the card. All right, so like I said, this card that I created is for the Spring Fling event going on over at STAMPlorations. So I will leave links to that below, so be sure to check that out because there's a lot of prizes and giveaways going on this month for that event. And of course, I'll leave the list of the products that I used to create the card below. So if you're interested in any of those products, you can always find them below the video or also on my blog, which of course I'll leave links to. So if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about Deco Foil. Is it something that you use in your card designs or just something you've decided to stay away from? And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you head out. All right, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.